So I'm not saying these are like the all-time greatest records ever, although I think the records on this list are pretty great. These are just the records that I found it uh, not necessarily easy, but these are records that I found it possible to learn a lot of important things from. And you'll notice that there is just about no pre-war blues on the list, and that's because when I was trying to learn this back in the Stone Age, those records were really hard to come by. And when I did hear them, a lot of times I found them kind of inaccessible. And it was the folk revival guys from the late 50s and early 60s who kind of cleaned up and systematized that music a little bit that I found way more accessible. Partly because they ironed out some of the kinks, and partly because those records were just made, you know, 20 or 30 years later than the pre-war stuff, and they were easier to hear. There was less surface noise. They were just easier documents to learn from. So with that caveat, here comes my list. So first, John Hurt. And really, any collection of John Hurt, he didn't make that much music. There's not that much to go through. So any basic anthology of John Hurt. But the stuff that he made for Vanguard in the 60s they are more modern recordings, so they're easier to learn from. So I think Mississippi John Hurt Today or something like that. So that's just sort of fingerpicking 101. You want to learn to play, that alternating thumb, fingerpicking stuff in a blues context. John Hurt is the place to start. Now the next four guys I learned from, I didn't realize this or think about this at the time, but they were all people who in one way or another were connected with Reverend Gary Davis. So I got all my Gary Davis stuff secondhand through these four people. So first, Dave Van Ronk. And he made a record in 1976 called Sunday Street for Philo that it's just solo. It's just Dave Van Ronk playing guitar and singing. The arrangements are amazing. So many just fundamental blues licks are just built into everything that he does. The songs are great. The performances are great. I stole a ton of stuff from that record, Sunday Street by Dave Van Ronk. Roy Bookbinder. Probably the first record I heard was his Going Back to Tampa record, but the one that I loved to listen to and learned a lot of stuff from was Bookaroo, which is a band record. It was produced by Jerry Douglas in the 80s, but just killer musicians on the record. Stuart Duncan on fiddle, Jerry Douglas plays dobro, great rhythm section, and there's a few solo tunes or like where you can really hear Roy playing his guitar. He does some stuff in open tuning. The arrangements are great, songs are great, great performances, really good record all the way around. If you want to just hear Roy, he made a live record in the 90s called Don't Start Me Talking for Rounder, and that is also just totally killer. So Roy Bookbinder. Stephen Grossman and John Renbourn together made a few duet records, and one of the first guitar records I ever owned was their Under the Volcano, which was the second record they made. That's got a version of Mississippi Blues on it. Their first record, which was just called Stephen Grossman and John Renbourn, had the opening tune has an amazing walking bass tune called Snap a Little Owl, which I also sat and painstakingly wrote out each line one by one and then kind of learned how to put it all together. So either of those records, they might be just reissued now like sort of a best of anthology, but those duet records were great. And Stephen Grossman, of course, spent tons of time with Gary Davis and teaches all of his stuff and knows that inside out. And then finally, the fourth guy in that group is Jorma Kaukonen, and the first Hot Tuna record. I didn't hear it till a little bit after I heard these other ones, but he does Gary Davis stuff on there. He does Hesitation Blues. He does Death Don't Have No Mercy, and it's just the two of them, the original Hot Tuna, him and Jack Cassidy. So you can really hear the guitar playing. And I remember learning a bunch of those tunes, and that helped me learn a lot of those kind of alternating thumb techniques. And also, Jorma himself said, if you're trying to figure out what he's doing and it's hard, then you're doing it wrong. So his arrangements are really good ones to learn from because they make sense. They sit on the guitar well. They're a great place to learn from. So those four guys, and that first record is just called Hot Tuna. Then. Ry Cooder, and he made a lot of records, still making records, but in Into the Purple Valley, or really Paradise and Lunch, and I think I ended up getting Paradise and Lunch because the Rolling Stone record guide gave it 5 stars and said it was the one to get, and it is. It's got great stuff on it. There's electric and acoustic finger picking on there. There are just some great guitar moments. Again, incredible arrangements, just super groovy, like just great songs, everything about that record. And of course, all the slide stuff. But even, when he's just finger picking the arrangements, there's lots there to be had, and finger picking in open tuning. So that's really valuable. And then Guy Van Duser, the record Stride Guitar, which is just basically Guy Van Duser's solo. I think Billy Novick plays clarinet on the James P. Johnson tune, and there's tap dancing on one song. But you can really hear exactly what's going on. And it's all arrangements of swing era, stride piano stuff. So like I said, there's James P. Johnson. There's, he arranges Duke Ellington's Black Beauty, which is one of the most beautiful fingerstyle things you'll ever hear in your life. Because it's an amazing song, and he does an amazing arrangement of it. And a few tunes of his own, and just these wonderful, he does Alligator Crawl, Fats Waller, and just really makes this piano-based music swing like crazy. It doesn't feel careful at all. It feels like such a great performance. So that's a really inspiring record. And he's also one of the few guys that I really love hearing playing nylon string guitar. It still sounds incredibly cool. So that's pretty sophisticated stuff, but it's really great to hear what he does. The last three records I'm going to mention aren't really, well, the next one isn't really a blues record. It's a record by Joe Pass and Ella Fitzgerald called Fitzgerald and Pass Again. And Joe Pass made a whole series of records called Virtuoso, where he just played solo unaccompanied guitar, but I actually like hearing him better with Ella Fitzgerald because they're playing standards, and he takes these short solos, but when he solos, he keeps the groove together. Just hearing the way that he plays on these standards and holds together the groove and the chords and plays these beautiful melodic statements. It's really pretty incredible, very inspiring. And of course, Ella Fitzgerald's great, and just to hear the two of them playing just a duo where there's no net, it's pretty amazing. They made 3 or 4 records, so that's my favorite one. They have a really cool version of Tennessee Waltz that they play in 4/4, so that alone is kind of worth the price of admission. And they also play World on a String, which is a great song. So good record, can't go wrong. The last 2 records aren't guitar records. The House of Blues, the club, they had or have a label. They put out a record called Essential Blues Piano, and it has solo or small group piano playing by Roosevelt Sykes and James Booker and Professor Longhair and Dr. John and just on and on. So if you want to get a little bit outside of just your guitar perspective, but still listen to blues and still hear like some really inspiring grooves and chord progressions and lines and things that don't necessarily automatically come to you on the guitar, that is a fantastic place to start. If you want to get further into any of that, then I totally recommend the James Booker record Junko Partner, which is insanely cool. He made a lot of records also, but that's a really good one to start with. It's mostly instrumental, and it's just got some just mind-boggling. It sounds like he's playing with 3 hands. It's just incredible. I love James Booker. And finally, one of my very top favorites, another pianist, Ray Bryant. And he made some solo records all through his career. But the very first one, Alone with the Blues, is a really great place to start. And again, just to hear different ways to reharmonize the blues. He's a jazz pianist, but he's very down home, very soulful, sort of combines, he was a bebop player and played with people like Miles Davis, but when he played solo, he had that whole two-handed thing where he just held the whole groove together. His chord voicings and where he goes and what he does with the blues is really pretty amazing. And as a blues fan and as a guitar player, it's really easy to hear like how cool it is, and it's also, to me, very inspiring. So there it is, 10 records I recommend. A lot of them will lead you back into a lot more of the usual suspects. Like all of those blues revival guys I mentioned will take you straight back to Gary Davis and some of the other pre-war blues guys. Guy Van Duser, he comes directly out of Chet Atkins, so of course that's a good place to go. Merle Travis, if you can find those solo Merle Travis records that are out there. but this is where I started. These are some things that people ask me, like, what fingerstyle blues records, who do you like? This is what I always, this is my go-to list. So I hope you have fun checking out some of those. Drop me a line, let me know who I forgot, who I unconscionably left out, or just who you like and what's on your list. Leave me a line down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time.